It's Spoilerin time, folks. This is the companion show to Cordkillers. On Cordkillers, we talk about how to watch things. On Spoilerin time, we talk about the things we have watched. This week, we're talking about Miami Vice, Season 4, Episode 19, Blood and Roses, with special guest Stanley Tucci, Justified, City Primeval, Season 1, Episode 6, and Good Omens, Season 2, Episode 4. I'm Tom Merritt. That man right there, my friends, you've missed him. You love him. It's Brian Brushwood.
I was about to say, I wonder if anybody still recognizes me at this point. It's been a minute.
Oh, it's so good to have you back to talk Spoilerin. And Naaim is sticking around to talk Good Omens with us. Welcome back, Naaim.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I didn't recognize Brian without the spikes.
It's been a minute.
Don't you tempt me.
He'll do it. All right, let's talk about Good Omens, Season 2, Episode 4. It's a flashback episode. We start with the bombing of, I don't know, is it St. Paul's Cathedral? It's something. They're meeting somewhere that they know is going to get bombed, and it will stop the three Nazis from getting the secret. And the bomb lands, and our heroes think everything is fine. But it turns out that those three people show up in hell and get sent back as zombies to try to track down Crowley, because they mention Crowley's name and they're like, Crowley, he shouldn't be cooperating with an angel. And then there's a great bit with a magic shop. Brian, I'm so glad that you're back on the show to talk about that one.
Yeah, I before I share my thoughts, I would love to hear from both everybody who is not me.
Okay, let's start with Naaim. Are you Brian?
I'm not Brian.
Okay, then you can go. Go ahead.
Okay.
What did you...
So I enjoyed it. It took me a minute to remember, because I hadn't rewatched the first season since it aired. So I watched it when it was on, and then I was watching this season, just sort of binging it through. It took me like maybe 5-10 minutes in to remember, oh, right, all of these characters were in an episode in the previous season, like the last season's like full flashback episode. So it was kind of, honestly, I didn't really remember until I recognized Mark Gatiss, and I was like, oh, that's right, Mark Gatiss was in the previous season. It was an enjoyable episode. I had fun with it. It was one of those, like, it's just kind of a character episode. There's not really a whole ton of story except for at the beginning and the end, which is kind of the reverse of what the rest of the season had done so far, which is like, hey, we have a little bit of a flashback, and then you go back into the main story, where this is like hey, let's have a little bit of a present, and then here's a whole story that happened that you never saw. So it was kind of fun and kind of cool, and this season very much has been about Crowley and Aziraphale's relationship. So having an episode of a past part of their relationship, and having a full like 40 minutes of it or whatever was kind of neat.
Tom?
I enjoyed this as a bottle episode. I imagine there are a couple of nice little Easter eggs in here that will prove fruitful in episodes to come. I, unlike Brian, am not burdened with undue knowledge of the magic industry. So I got to just enjoy this as like, hey, guy does really hard thing, not very well, but somehow skates through and it goes well, and bullet caught in the teeth. Look at that. That's fun. So I mostly enjoyed it. But it was probably, and this is what Brian always says, every episode of Good Omens is good. There probably has to be a least enjoyable episode. Probably my least favorite, but only in the sense that it wasn't really moving the story forward. Bryce, what about you?
The episode this week, or this episode that we're talking about, really solidified my complaints from the past 2 weeks, which has been doing this whole flashback, really hammering on the flashback, to the point where I am now recognizing that that's why some of these episode titles are incredibly long, because they have to have the title of the mini episode that is in them. I hated that. I hated the way that this is structured as an episode. I did not like that we got 2 minutes of something happening and then like the rest of the episode being this other great story. It's not like I don't think it's a great story. The writing is fantastic. The acting is great, but it ruins the framing of the episode to say we're going to spend about 3 minutes in the current time and not progress anything.
Wait a minute.
well, and 3 minutes at the
we
end.
found out that making it rain does not cause humans to fall in love.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
We did. Important.
Well,
it's so frustrating.
especially in a 6-episode season. Like you kind of have economy of like only certain economy of time.
It makes me understand why everyone is defending the season a little bit as like a bridge season. Like, you know what? Maybe I would need to defend this too a little bit because I really have not liked the way that they've paced these flashbacks. Brian, we have now all given our teases.
So I have been derelict in my duty, and I have been absent for 2 weeks straight, and which meant that my homework yesterday was to watch 3 episodes in a row of this program, and I made the call, and my 15-year-old Josie, I was like, yeah, I don't know that you need to see anything from the first season. All you got to know is, one's an angel, one's a demon. The angel is a little bit, bends the rules. The demon, a little bit, doesn't like being the bad guy. So I have to give full context. I know you guys have already discussed it, but I thought the Job episode was very clever, very good. And when we got to this episode, I should be on rails all the way bought in, especially since, quite literally a magic act is one of the things that happens in World's Greatest Con Season 1 during the Nazi bombing of Britain. Not gonna lie, it felt very Neil Gaiman, where he...
Is understandable given his position on the show.
As Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman, when he's at his best, he surprises me. But when I get vexed, it's when he patiently explains to me things that I am absolutely more of an expert in than he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a little bit of that in this episode.
Quick question. Just about the magic stuff or beyond that?
As the magic stuff definitely felt kind of weird. I'm not like a revealing sort of guy, but it's kind of screwed up that they gave the bullet catch trick. I
assume
they gave away
magic
one.
shops don't generally sell you the rifle along with the bullet.
Whatever. If you're in this far, we could speak plainly. They gave away one of many aspects to the bullet catch trick. A good bullet catch trick would not just rely on, aim one way but shoot another. A good bullet catch would also involve as we saw in the Prestige, a swapping out of a real load for a wax load, or as
you probably wouldn't have a visible gunshot aiming at like 5 common people, like
plus also, if you're gonna do that, then own the fact that you bought like a bootleg version of it. Don't act like, and now you know how the bullet catch is done. Although I will tip my hat to the fact that he called out Chung Ling Soo, somebody who was of British origin, who lived his life as though he was Chinese, just because that was the fashion of the time. It's tough because there are parts I really wanted to cheer for, but ultimately the pacing just kind of slayed me. It was so slow.
This definitely feels like an episode where if I was rewatching the season, I might just skip over this one.
Yes.
Because I don't even think the flashback, like in previous episodes, told us like something about the mystery of why we're here. Like at least in the previous episodes, like it took place in the bar or it's set up, the name of that bar. This just kind of, I didn't notice if it tied back into the.
Well, it had, and I forget the name of the demon who took Crowley's job, but like her sending the guy up and them trying to catch Crowley. So like, it has a little bit of the Shacks. Yeah, it has a little bit of that, like sort of tie into the story, but not a ton, you know?
But I think you're right, because this is the first Good Omens that I found myself drifting versus just being captivated.
Which
and I
on
watched
paper,
it at a point.
this should have been my favorite one.
Yeah, I watched it at a point where I'm like, oh, I just want to be captivated right now. I just need a break. And Good Omens does that and subsumes me. And then I found myself thinking about other things, which I didn't in the first 3 episodes of this season. And you're right, Brian. On paper, there's nothing different about this particular episode. So I do put that down to the pacing.
I will say that John Hamm is a national treasure, and I'm so glad that he's finally entered the phase where he's comfortable doing comedy, because he's very, very funny. Like he's
not in this episode. It is I believe, and it is a detraction from this episode. It is a huge bummer.
Yeah, keep in mind, I watched all 3 episodes at once. Yeah.
Yes,
but him alphabetizing the books by whatever the first letter is.
First letter of the first sentence.
Yes,
yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
No, it's funny, actually. I was talking to a friend about John Hamm a couple weeks ago, and he was like, what do people know John, like, aside from Mad Men, what would be the other thing you know John Hamm from? And I ran a little survey on Twitter and got a ton of different answers.
How many of them involved Huge and Dong?
2.
Okay.
Yeah, two out of about 45. So that was actually, surprisingly, Brian, the answer is a couple.
Look, it's fine. I just don't know what we got this episode. And it's such a bummer, because I wanted to sing the praises of the previous 2 episodes that we watched before, because I absolutely love this, like a good philosophy class. It constantly is asking you, okay, well, what about this? Is this the moral thing? And then, and both sides are kind of cracking at the edges. And again, I know you already discussed it, but I thought the Job episode was excellent. This one, I was hoping for more. Didn't get what I wanted.
It feels a little bit like sometimes shows will do this, where it's like, hey, we have all the episodes set up and we're about to have the conclusion. Here's like a middle episode, that, which is, that's not necessarily a thing they should or shouldn't do, whatever, but like, it kind of feels like that, of like all right, we know the big stuff's about to happen. And it kind of at the end of this episode is where she's getting the armies together, right?
Yeah, she's like ordered to do the plan that she pitches.
So it's sort of like, okay, at the end of this episode is, hey, the big stuff is about to happen. So we gave you a kind of a bridge episode between the stuff that happened and now the big stuff's going to happen. Whether that's a good,
all of that felt like a trap to me.
They could be great sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. In this case, not as much. It is the right, like Brian says, the least good episode.
All right,
enjoyable. And this obviously enjoyable moments, because anytime anytime that Aziraphale and Crowley are on screen together is like, it's always magic. Those 2 guys.
Well, it also like when we're all the way up to current time, we seem to have established an agreed upon coding of their relationship, which means you can't go back and manufacture tension anymore. And that's what they tried to do in this episode.
Sure.
It felt like to me.
Any last thoughts on Good Omens season 2, episode 4?
Oh, you sound broken up.
I want to.
It felt
Brian.
weird.
He's one of the zombies from the episode.
I did not like this episode. Like, I don't like. I think the way they handled the flashback made me not like this episode that I otherwise would have liked.
Yeah. All right.
So you don't feel bad. Like, you can.
I mean, I want them to win, but
well.
We got 2 more
Listen,
episodes.
you
They
can have a
wrap.
bad episode in a great season of television. It happens. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not like a thing and like the rest of it.
You can have a horrible season, but still have an all-star first baseman and third baseman. Like, it just,
Right.
it can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Take pleasure in the parts that are good.
Just take pleasure
Brian,
in the
understand.
3 and 4 spots in the lineup, and occasionally, maybe sometimes some of the other large.
Sometimes when you have a pinch hitter of a show and the RBI of it all.
Wins above replacement. Hey, Naaim Siddiqi, thank you so much for chatting about Good Omens with us. Remind folks where they can find your good stuff.
Yeah, www.iamkuhan.com is where all the links to all of my stuff is. And right now, Tom teed me up to talk about Rain Delay Radio, which is my baseball podcast that I do with some friends where we talk about baseball and all of the going on around the league and such. So if you're a baseball fan, Rain Delay Radio is where you want to go.
And that is our discussion of Good Omens Season 2, Episode 4. Thanks, man.
Is it because that episode was so bad?
He's so angry about that episode of Good Omens.
He somehow slammed the Skype call close. How did he manage it?
Oh, that's amazing.
Weird.
Yeah. Doesn't even have a physical phone. Justified City Primeval, Season 1, Episode 6. I'm going to call it the park episode because every good mystery crime series has a setup in the park with people on mics and walkie-talkies and the mark being marked, and then the thing goes bad and people run up fast walking to try to do the thing, except this time Sweetie died because of that, because Sweetie tried to double cross Manziel.
So I had to choose between the two shows, which one I was going to watch 3 episodes of in the last 24 hours to get fully caught up. I trusted Justified to just catch me up and it'll be fine. And I felt very good about that decision. I there's probably some adjective I could use to describe that decision. But I rather loved this. I thought it's good. Our villain, portrayed by Manziel or Bo, what's his name?
Boyd Holbrook.
Boyd Holbrook, who I need to memorize that name because when I get his autograph, I have to at least know his name.
Mr.
He is
Holbrook.
Great. He is great and electric, and he has an energy about him that he is very Walton Gogginsy. I loved it. I loved this episode, and I don't even know what happened in the last 2 episodes.
Here's a cardinal sin that Bryce and I committed. We didn't mention David Cross was in the last episode.
God.
Bert Dickey.
Inspired casting.
David Cross. But thankfully, he's in this episode too. So not only do we get to mention it, but Brian, you got to actually see him playing the middleman who just wants his painting back.
And I just had one brief flash of like, what do you do? And then I suddenly all these images of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad go into my mind.
Yep.
And then I'm like, yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
It's not a prestige turn for David Cross exactly, though.
I mean, not yet. But he did a fine job, I thought.
Oh, sure. It's Saul. He was not. He was definitely a goofy Mark, especially in the previous episode. I guess if you didn't see
I still perceive Saul Goodman as a goofy Mark.
Okay, but
yeah.
That's a longer, different conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah. I like this episode. I think I like this show now. I think I like
Joe. You said that last week, so this you didn't lose it this week. That's
I didn't
good.
lose it.
That's a good sign.
Maybe I need to rewatch the first 2 episodes and just see if now that I've faux sliced this, that I'll have a better understanding of what is actually going on.
I'm intrigued by Carolyn now. I was starting to just kind of assume Carolyn's plot was going to be predictable, but it does feel a little bit like Carolyn manipulated Raylan into eliminating Diane as the competition.
Carolyn is the love
Carolyn's
interest?
the lawyer that is defending Manziel that Raylan has a little fling with.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes to her at the end of this episode and says, hey, you're holding back on me. We need to stop flirty and start talking real.
I rather liked the kind of resigned attitude that Sweetie has at his little bar, but this was the episode where I felt like it was slow revealed that it's like, oh, he looks like a tired older person who's beyond all this, but he's got sharp eyes and a sharp mind the entire time.
Just look at the flowers, sweetie.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought I liked it quite a bit. Fill me in on the episodes I didn't watch. Did they successfully get Raylan's daughter out of the picture?
She's still not in the show. Yes.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned her much. Like it's as if she was never there.
Okay.
Which frankly, I thought it was going to bother me more. But at this point, I don't know how you would include her, and I kind of hope they don't until the end.
I thought the ending of this episode was kind of funny because you kind of can tell when the bar is on fire that we haven't actually like really gotten much of the actual city of Detroit. Like they show us the bar on fire, but they have to do it in a very specific way because we really never otherwise looked at the outside of this bar. Like we're in Detroit, but there's really no reason it couldn't be anywhere else, which is weird for a show that is conceptualized around putting this guy in a whole other place.
I'm agreeing with you, but it seems like what they try to do was do a whole bunch of telling people we don't do that like that in Detroit, and not showing us.
There's just like
would it
no
be
landscape.
worse or better if they intercut scenes of Detroit?
That would be something.
That's the other move I see shows make is like everything's shot the same way as this is shot. But when you move from one scene to another, you're showing the baseball stadium or the famous pizza place or something.
I said something.
I don't know how you would reconcile that with the fact that from the very beginning, they begin in Florida with her going to a church camp kind of situation.
But just even establishing shots. I mean, we just I guess I'm not pushing for it to be more traditional. Even just like it was a very strange thing to notice that like, oh yeah, this like very significant setting of the story. I just never really saw the outside of, or I needed to.
I'll be honest, never even occurred to me. Didn't even think about it.
Yeah, and
because it's a brick building. To me, that's Detroit. Have you ever been to Detroit?
I haven't. I have not been to the Motor City.
I wonder if that makes a difference. Because in my head, I'm just like, well, yeah, Detroit. I've been there.
Maybe. In fact, probably a good bit. Because I think we don't see much of the neighborhood or the city. Right. The city is not a character in this show.
No, it's not.
What if the airport was a character, though? Then I'd have a real
the
bond.
Delta terminal or the other terminal? The Delta terminal is very nice at Detroit Airport.
So what is the surprise?
I didn't think we'd kill Sweetie this earlier, so I'm surprised by that.
That we hadn't killed him up until then?
No, I didn't think we'd kill him
this early.
Yeah.
Is he dead?
He got shot in the head.
He's pretty dead, and then on fire.
He shot him in the chest,
and then
there was a fire. Because remember, he invited him to go unplug the jukebox, and then the gun that we had seen stashed there wasn't there.
Yeah, but I thought we saw him on the ground while the fire was going on. So I mean, I guess there's enough.
We didn't see a body, Bryce. I don't know. Brian's got a point.
Okay, but like, he can't come back to life. That would suck.
He also has somebody who lives across the street from his place of business, who clearly has a relationship with.
Yeah.
Who's to say whether or not he ran in and pulled Sweetie out
and then got him treated?
I mean,
I don't know. It's not impossible.
And wouldn't that be a nice surprise to finally
No. I like that there was this amount of stakes, and it surprised me that they killed him.
Yeah.
If he comes back alive, I'm going to be like, I'm going to start feeling like it's a little rubbery if they bring him back.
Yeah. Oh, they greenlit the Sweetie spinoff, so we got to bring him back to life.
Yep. And I'm with you. There's not going to be a Sweetie spinoff.
Menzel's character, seriously. Like, I didn't think Menzel could get scarier. And the fact that he's like, sorry, Sweetie. Yeah, that's That's pretty deep.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's badly burned, but still somewhat alive, and that his BFF takes heroic action of revenge on his behalf.
If I told you there are 2 more episodes, do we think there's time to bring Sweetie back? I just don't think that there's time to.
Oh no! We have
Also,
time to see him die. Saying
we're headed.
You got him.
Yeah, he
Give it
dies
to
in
the
hospital or
orphanage.
something. Yeah, because we're headed for a Manziel Raylan showdown, right? We're headed for a shootout between the two.
I mean, the
Like Old
invitation
West
was
style.
explicitly given.
Exactly.
This
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like either of you bit on my Carolyn conspiracy theory that she's been using Raylan more.
This is
Even
the
right.
girlfriend one.
The lawyer.
She's the lawyer, Manziel's lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like there's a concern about a leak, and Raylan is screwing the opposition. So, I think if that is what happens, it seems really really set up for that.
Yeah, and she's his lawyer. She's
So-
Manziel's lawyer.
Yeah.
We've been led to believe that she doesn't want to be his lawyer, and she's reluctantly his lawyer, and she knows it's dangerous. Maybe not. Maybe she's in cahoots, as they say.
I mean, I know. Well, I feel like it's unfair for me to weigh in too heavily, having missed 2 episodes.
This is not a court of law. You can just.
Well, maybe, what I want to say is,
We can cut it out. If
I
you want.
had expected to care more about literally anyone, but all I want to do is see Holbrook, whatever his name is.
But,
Manziel.
Manziel, Boyd
Manziel,
Holbrook.
yeah.
Yeah.
Voight-Kampf Holbrook.
Voight-Kampf.
What did you guys think about Mansell walking away? I thought that was kind of a strange thing that everyone wouldn't even surveil him. They don't know where he is even. Like, why don't you send some guys to follow him or something? You're just going to let him walk. You are pretty sure he killed
I mean, they
the
had
judge.
to let him walk. They had to let him walk, but yeah, you'd think that they'd have a tail on him. But I guess they had a tail on him and he lost it, so maybe they just gave up. I don't know.
It's it's
Well, and also like
It's like a manhunt for this guy.
As long as we're complaining, how impotent of a phrase could you utter to a professor justified? Oh, do you want to draw on each other? I don't think you would win. It's like there's one thing we know about martial law is that he's going to win in a draw.
Yeah. But that's Manziel. Manziel doesn't think so.
wow.
That's true to his nature.
He's that cocky Yankee. He is a cocky
Yeah.
Yankee.
That's right. City Manziel.
Okay.
Anything else on Justified, City Manziel, Primeval?
No, I'm glad they're doing this.
That tone belies the words that you just said.
Well,
I love that they're doing.
I'm glad they're doing another at bat, you know. But maybe you should hit the ball.
Oh,
I'm just saying. It's
Okay. Wow.
a bit of advice.
scoreboards. That's Brushwood.
All right. That is Justified City Primeval, Season 1, Episode 6. Let's talk Miami Vice, Season 4, Episode 19, Blood and Roses. The special guest is Stanley Tucci. But as Brian pointed, also got Frank Stallone in this as one of the muscle.
Tom, on paper, if I were to describe objectively a bunch of aspects of this particular episode to myself, I would say this sounds like an objectively awful episode of Miami Vice.
Okay.
There are no extraordinary set pieces. There are no out of the box surprises. It's just a cop pretends to get into a relationship with somebody and then gets out. Mm-hmm. However, it really, really mattered that it was a female. Like if this was either Crockett or Tubbs, I don't think there would be much of an episode here. But seeing one of our up and comers, like she deeply regretted giving herself over and having sex with this guy, and I was like, wow, that felt to me to be some progressive stuff for late 80s primetime Friday night television on NBC, and to ask the question of like, where does the job end and what is agency and so on. I ended up liking this much more than it deserves to have been liked.
Yeah, I feel like it may not be a modern story, but it's about 20 years ahead of 1988 when it came out.
Yeah.
First of all, I've been saying for a couple episodes, but like we don't ever get a Gina or a Trudy story. We got one Trudy story so far, and it wasn't that great. So it was good to see a Gina story. You're right that the dynamics of a woman going undercover with a man who's a crime boss is a much different story than Crockett undercover seducing a lady. It's just not the kind of story you expect from 1988. And while it was told with a primetime television sensibility, lots of fades to black and unspoken words, somehow they managed to make it punch, even though they couldn't show, and maybe because they couldn't show and tell as much as you would if it was on cable now.
You know what it reminded me of is if you've ever seen V or V the Final Battle, which is basically just kind of a proxy story of the rise of the Third Reich, only with aliens. Like there are characters who are just like shrugging, saying, "Yeah, no, I'll have sex with them. That's what we have to do for the resistance or whatever." Now, in that case, that's a full-on war environment, but seeing it in a softer environment, you know, with drug distribution and cartoonish gangsters, like I was made very uncomfortable. I was really surprised that this episode affected me the way it did.
The other thing they did, which I found interesting, is show Crockett, Tubbs, and even Switek being insensitive.
Very.
And not insensitive because it was the 80s and that's how they wrote it, but like shining a light on the fact that they're just like, yeah, whatever, Gina, you know, it's a tough job, and showing like they are not considering how it is different for Gina. And I know that that was intentional because they show Trudy stepping in and going, yeah, I know too, and I'm the only one other one in this room who is probably the coldest moment I think we've seen from Castillo, where he very carefully takes into consideration all the pressures and everything Gina is saying and what she's been through, and just looks at her and goes, stay undercover, stay with it. Boom, done. Like that's the job.
Because at that point, but before the actual, you know, sex acts, it was a lot of like belittling of her. It was a lot of like, we don't even think that you're gonna do well. You know?
Oh, look at you! You're gonna play detective, are you?
Yeah,
Okie
right.
dokie.
I did. Okay, so again, this is all pre the sex act, but I was kind of on their side for a while. Gina is not a great actress. I thought her undercover acting was not great. But then
shows what you know.
Then the thing happens, and then it's very serious, and that really, you're right, Brian. Like it really does hit when she's breaking down and confessing about talking about it.
Well, and they managed to pull off a. I think this will be, by the time we're done watching, one of the more remembered stories that we will have experienced, and they did it without an explosion, without going to that quarry,
That's true. We didn't take a trip to the quarry.
Let's We can't ignore the fact that like the end of this takes place in a spaghetti factory. And there's the very comical way that guy dies on that that lift.
Yeah,
The
and the
bu- the-
hoist. Yeah.
The conveyor belt that goes up.
And
Yeah.
the very obvious dummy that's just falling down.
I mean, yes, and they certainly. I think we can all agree that they got a lot more out of this emotionally than any of us would expect. Especially if any of us had described to ourselves what we were about to see, we'd be prepared to laugh our asses off. But instead, I was like, oh, that is pretty awful. It was interesting.
Pretty powerful 1988 TV. Pretty powerful 2003 TV, frankly. Now,
2023.
no, I said 2003 on purpose
Oh.
because I don't know that it's that powerful in 2020.
Fair enough.
But I think it's still powerful at 20 years ago. Now, thank you for pointing that out, though, so people didn't think I just misspoke. I do think we have to call attention to the food shot, Bryce, that you captured. Bryce sent us a text message like, what is that? And it's a picture of one of their meals in the fancy restaurant. And I'm laughing. And I'm
It's
like,
not in the restaurant.
Yeah, it's just spaghetti with meatballs and like sliced red peppers and no sauce. And Bryce points out, like, those aren't meatballs. It's broccoli.
It's broccoli. Well, no, this was the plate of food on the dead body in the pool.
Oh, this is what he was eating when they found him dead.
Yeah,
That's right. Okay.
And I love this shot because it seems obvious. To me it seems obvious that they just thought that the resolution and the quality at the time, it would just be easier to put some bell peppers and broccoli than to
it'll
like
look
cook
like
up.
it's sauce.
Yeah.
That is one of those things where it's like when you're working with super duper low definition television, for example, cereal shots, they never poured actual milk. They always used white glue.
Cornstarch and milk. Yeah.
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 But yeah, no, it is pretty silly.
It's green. It's green broccoli. Anyway, very good.
Well, there you go, folks. Any other thoughts on Miami Vice Blood and Roses? One of the earliest works of Stanley Tucci.
If I believed there would be any consequences of this episode, I would love to see the follow-up episodes. I would love to see her, Gina, right? Deciding, I don't know that I'm cut out for field work. I don't know about this or whatever. But of course we won't, because it's a procedural and everything will go back to normal.
It's another Dick Wolf story, and it feels like it both ways, right? Like there's kind of no reason that this should take place in Miami, this episode.
Yeah.
Like it's all about Italians and the Italian mob. And there's no reason for it to like.
Well, and also this looks like
funny.
one of the cheapest episodes that we've seen so far. They didn't go out of their way to show off, and
couldn't even get spaghetti sauce.
Great example of the possible budget constraint forcing them to tell a better story, though. In this particular case,
I don't even know that
your
the story's better, but maybe some of the best acting that we've seen. Weirdly,
to your point, though, the next episode, A Bullet for Crockett, appears to be a clip show.
Oh, that'll be fun.
So no, we don't get a follow-up on Gina. We get, while taking down a drug dealer, Crockett is shot. While he fights for his life, Trubbs tries to find the shooter, and we take a look at Crockett's life.
Oh yes.
Wow.
Okay, I'm in.
We weren't going to watch that. Should we watch that? Do you want to watch that?
We
I'd
should
skip
watch it.
that
Okay,
one.
here's what we should do. We should watch it, and we should each figure out what music montage should be played during it.
Bryce, are you in?
Yeah, sure. It will be funny to see clips from episodes we have not seen. That will be really interesting, actually.
It'll be fun to see clips from episodes we have seen, even. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So, well, Bryce, you'll have to change your CG then.
That's fine.
Sorry.
I was so set to hate this episode, and I just didn't. I was really surprised.
So we're doing A Bullet for Crockett next time. Miami Vice 420. 420. Yeah, I get it. And then that will push off the 3-parter that we'll be getting to.
But we're not going to watch all 3 parts, are we? Are we?
Yes.
Wait,
We are going to watch all 3 parts.
maybe we could just vote after each part?
Yeah,
whether
let's
we
do
keep
that.
going.
It's got Julia Roberts and Huggy Bear.
All right.
How do you beat that?
Save your speech for the next week.
All right. So that is Miami Vice, season 4, episode 19, Blood and Roses. Next time on Spoilerin Time, Good Omens, season 2, episode 5, Justified City Primeval, season 1, episode 7, and Miami Vice 420. It's right there in the name. A Bullet for Crockett. Folks, you get these episodes earlier if you are a patron, and you get the after party, the after talk. In after talk, we spoil even more. We talk about other shows that we're watching. We talk about the direction for the show. You get a whole lot more in after talk. So become a patron and get that as well. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll spoil you again next time.
Woo!
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.